Okay. Okay, well, let's last the. Zeb, you all right there?
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. And where's our buddy Heshi this morning? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to start with the learning sponsors, and then we'll go with today's stuff. I've been asked to announce that at the end, we should make sure that the foodstuffs are put in the fridge so that we don't get any little visitors.
We like visitors.
Not this kind.
Only the two-legged, huh?
Right. Learning sponsorships, a year of learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malka Pro Man and Philip Man. And Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Rosner bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachumata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moynester, Nechama Azna bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Zecher Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A month of learning by Lydia and Abe Krause's many friends in honor of their 50th anniversary. Josh and Carol Sanborn in memory of his parents, Chiana bat Aryeh Leib, Shmuel Aryeh ben Baruch. Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef. A week of learning by Leonie Meiselman in memory of her husband, Nissen Yitzchak ben Shlomo Zalman. Family of Esther Shepatovsky in her memory, Esther Riva bat Betzalel. Sid Paris in memory of his father, Chaim ben Aaron Cohen. And that is it. I don't have any listed for today since the bulletin won't be coming out till later this morning. Rabbi Hanani ben, okay. Ruben, what am I?
Automatic pilots.
What? I'm so used to automatic pilot. Start me off, somebody. Hashem is having a Leah crank or feel about the Yeshua Shem Atliya L'Chopan Israel good Kabenshya. Right? Okay. All right. Today we go out and get our shoes shined, right? Okay. Shoe shine, plural. Okay. Okay.
Michael lives.
What?
Michael lives.
Okay. So I want to come back to our discussion just very quickly, and then we'll go into today's Gemara. We've seen, I want to say I find two major themes right now. One is whether the act of Yibum is the mitzvah, and chalitza is simply a alternative. Okay, so it's two sides of the same coin, or whether Yibum and is also a mitzvah. Okay, as well as the Yibum, Chalitza, because one still has a formal act by which they break or conclude the Zikah. Okay, so that is one theme we seem to be finding. And I sort of felt the Gemara was moving in the direction of telling us that no, Yibum was the main practice, and only in cases where that's not viable for whatever reason, okay, then Chalitza. Okay? Yet, we see that there are situations, the Gemara is telling us, where a woman is not a viable option. Her status is not a viable option for either Yibum or Chalitza. Okay? So we need to keep that in mind as we'll go into today's, I believe, Gemara. The other element is going to be, what then is the status of the co-wife, right? In a number of these situations, okay? I'm going to give one quick example, or two quick examples, okay? We got yesterday, Bob, you reminded me, right? That what is the situation of Machzir Grushato, okay? That somebody divorced a woman, took her back, right? Then he died, all right, without producing progeny. What's the status of that woman in terms of Yibum or Chalitza? Are there other examples where we could say that there's similar kinds of questions, right? We already saw, for example, that there was a big discussion of whether Rebbe held the same principles as Rebbe Chia in some of these kinds of cases, particularly the example of Machzir Grushato. Okay? So the Gemara then threw in another example to us. What about a situation where an individual performs Chalitza to one of the women, okay, and then afterwards is Makadesh her, right? And then he dies without progeny. What's her status then? Okay, do we say that since he performed the love, okay, like in Rebbe's view, it's ordinarily it's simply an ordinary love, and therefore he would get Malkus? Or do we say no, like Rabbi Chia, that we say no, that kind of an act is similar to any other kind of erva act, and therefore chayev kareh, and therefore it should be included in that list, okay, of the initial 15 or 16. Okay? So all of these things are within this whole perspective. Okay? And the Gemara is not going to be satisfied with, so to speak, just those examples. Okay? They're going to give us another complicated example in a little bit. And that was going to be the example of, let's assume Shimon is married to a woman, and he's warned her about not being in a private situation. I'll put it that way. In a private situation with another man. She's a suspected sota. Okay? Right? And so what happens in that situation if there's also a co-wife? Okay? In that kind of a situation, okay, does he give, I mean, he theoretically would divorce, all right, or she has to go through the sota ceremony, okay? In theory, he could divorce her, that comes back then still to the question of the status of the co-wife, right? So all of these things become raised, right? Now, whether they were theoretical or whether they actually occurred as part of society, that's for a discussion for another time, okay? But that's why I'm suggesting at the very top of Yud Aleph, where we start today's Gemara, all right? The Gemara tells us kasha, okay? There's problems here, okay? All right?
Can I ask you one thing? You mentioned the sota. Suppose she starts the ceremony of the sota, and before she drinks the water, he dies. That she continue with it and drink the water.
That's a good question, Seb. Okay, that's a very good question. All right. All right. The accuser is no longer on the scene, right? So in theory, okay, it might be that not necessary for her to continue the ceremony. On the other hand, if the Beis Din may feel, okay, that she does need to continue the ceremony because that would prove her innocence and she would not be suspect.
On the other hand, because of wiping out God's name, you would say not to proceed.
Not to proceed, right? So it's a good question.
It's only allowed because of the marriage being.
Because of the, right, because of the having brought the question, his having brought the question. Okay,
No, suppose she doesn't drink, is she still subject to evil now?
not if, oh, you mean if he never had progeny?
No, she didn't have the progeny, and it's never been ascertained whether she's guilty or not.
Right. Well, would you marry her, Zev? I don't know if I would. Okay, she's got a bad reputation. That's the problem.
Maybe that's why the husband died, because he was improperly accusing her.
Could be. Okay,
But a bad reputation doesn't change her evil status.
right, right. Well, it doesn't change. Well, that's the question. Does her bad reputation imply that in that situation it's better to do chalitza than yibum?
Right.
Okay. And that's where we get back to that whole question: is there really one mitzvah or two? All right. Okay. So kasha, says the Gemara, we have a problem, nevertheless, whether we say Rebbe hold by Rebbe Chia's view or not. Okay. All right. So that's the issue. All right. So Rav Ashi Savar, Rav Ashi held, so then we come back to Reish Lakish. He held like the view of Reish Lakish. Umataretz like a Rebbe Shimon. And he explained it within the view of Rabbi Shimon. Ravina Savarla to Rabbi Yochanan. And Ravina held more like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Umataretz Karabanan. And he then explained it and answered according to the view of Rabbanan. Okay, so now, just in case we forgot what that machloket was, the Gemara is going to quickly review it for us. Rav Ashi Savarla, Karesh Lakish. We said Rav Ashi seems to be of the view, of the opinion of Reish Lakish. Umataretz la Rabbi Shimon. And he explains it, right? Gives an answer according to the view of Rabbi Shimon. Namely, Hacholetz liyavamto, v'chazar v'kitsha, okay? One who performed chalitza to his sister-in-law, okay? And then he went back and became engaged, married her, okay? And if he then dies, okay? So what do we have as a situation is where the oldest brother, I'm going to put it in this context, the oldest brother was married, he died without progeny. Okay, then comes the next oldest brother, right? And he then did chalitza for that woman, okay?
And then married her.
He marries, then he did chalitza, he marries her, and then he dies. Okay, so second brother dies, all right? What happens? Okay, we go on now. Sricha chalitza min ha'achim. That woman needs a second chalitza from one of the other brothers. Okay? So the Gemara asks, Man achin, which brothers? Achin hayiladim, the brothers that are born. Okay? Now, remember we've got an issue here. Are we talking about younger brothers that were born while the first brother was alive? Or while the second brother was alive? Okay? Or are we talking about a situation where maybe there were younger brothers born after even the second brother died? But wouldn't we therefore and say in that case, didn't we see an earlier statement that said those brothers don't need to be involved? Okay? So now coming back into our Gemara, right? Yes,
From
Ruth.
from a logical point, that brother never had a Zika. There was no connection between
Right.
that brother and
That would be the reason that we would support the idea that those youngest brothers who were not born even when the second brother was alive should not have a responsibility for Yibum or Chalitza. Right. Okay? So logically, you brought a good point. That's why the Gemara goes on, right? Kiman, according to whom? Keresh Lakish, according to the view of Reish Lakish, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Kirabi Shimon, right? Kirabi Shimon, right? Namely, Amad Echad min Hanoladim v'Kadsha, okay? Ein la alav klum. If one of the later birthed brothers went and married her, ein la alav klum, she has nothing. In other words, the marriage is not tofsin. Okay? That's what our Mishnah said at the very end, right? Kiman kereish Lakish, according to the view of Reish Lakish. Now we're going to flip and look at the other side. Ravina Savarla to Rabbi Yochanan. Ravina was of the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Umetaretz la aliba de Rabbanan. And he explained it according to the view of the rabbis. Hacholetz liyavamto, one who performed chalitza for the sister-in-law. Okay, remember it's now, we're still talking about the second oldest brother who did it for his older firstborn brother who died without progeny to that wife. V'chazar v'kidsha, and then he went back and married her. Tzricha chalitza min ha'achim, and we say that she needs a second chalitza from younger brothers. Manachim, which brothers? Achin hanoladim. Here again, we're saying it's brothers that were born. Okay, but he's saying it's during the lifetime of the first brother. Okay, well, certainly it was the lifetime of the second brother if he was born during the lifetime of the first brother, right? Okay, Keman, according to whom? To Rabbi Yochanan, like the view of the Rabbi Yochanan. Amad echad min hayilodim says, what about the fact that if one of the younger birth brothers came, the kidsha, and engaged and married her, ein la alav klum, then we still follow what the Mishnah said, that there's nothing there. That marriage is not tofsim.
Why not?
Why?
Why not?
The Mishnah said it's not because if he was born,
I understand.
right, if he has no
Connection.
connection to her. So therefore, the yibum is not valid, okay? Which means he can't marry her because no appropriate chalitza was done for one of the older brothers.
If it's determined that the woman is sterile. so-
Oh, that's what we saw. An Ilonit? No, then she doesn't need yibum or chalitza. Okay, so we
It's no
said
pollution, it's an ekachtos.
it's mekach taos, right? So then that, remember we said, we do come across situations, okay, that would be a good example, the Ilonis, that neither Yibum nor Chalitza apply. Okay, so how could you, so if that's the case, is that an exception? Or do we say again, coming back, that Yibum is the key mitzvah? Or do we say Yibum is a mitzvah in some situations and Chalitza is a mitzvah in other situations? Because maybe there's still the Zika.
And then what if the husband's sterile?
Well, that's another situation, exactly. Okay? So what happens? Kiman kirabanan, he said, according to the rabbi. Now we go on. Itmar. About this, we said the following. Haba'al yibama. Okay? One who has had relations with his widowed sister-in-law. Let's use that term for translation for the moment. His yibama. Uba echad min ha'achim. And then along come one of the other brothers. Okay? So we've got Shimon, Levi, Ruvain, right? So Levi, let's say, had relations with Shimon's, right, widow. And then what happens? Then along comes the third brother, Ruvain, right? Minachim, Al Sarata, and he has relations with the co-wife of Ruvain. Again, you can see why we would have diagrams in this situation. Okay? Plige ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. So we now get to another machloket between Rav Acha and Ravina. Chad Amar b'karet. One says in this situation, the punishment is karet. V'chad Amar ba'aseh. And the other says he's only over on a positive commandment. Okay? Man da'amar b'karet. The one who says he's over on karet, karesh lakish. In other words, he holds like the view of Reish Lakish. Uman da'amar ba'aseh, and the one who says he's over simply in a positive commandment, to Rabbi Yochanan, is like Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So now we get another unique situation. Says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Sarat Sota Asura, the co-wife of a woman suspected, I'll say, of being a sota, she is forbidden. So what does it mean, forbidden? Right? Does that mean that she's not eligible for either yibum or chalitza? Okay? Tum'ah kativba. Why? Because the word defilement is associated with her. Ka'arayot, just like in the example of arayot. Okay? Now, in this situation, we see now that's a machloket. Meitiv Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda challenged, and he says the following. Rabbi Shimon Omer. What does Rabbi Shimon say? Okay? Biata o chalitzata me'achiv shal rishon poteret tzarata. Okay? That the conjugal relations or the chalitza, okay, with one of the brothers of the first, okay, exempts his co-wife. Now, what does this suggest? Marriage when husband thought dead, but he really was still alive. Okay, so she thought her husband was dead and therefore went and married number two. Okay, and then she finds out he's still alive. And then, okay, he shortly thereafter dies without progeny. What's her status? Okay, does she need yibum chalitza in that situation? And the Rabbi Shimon is saying, okay, that if one had relations or chalitza with her, that woman, it exempts her whatever co-wife that could have been for that first husband, right? Namely, that's proof that the tzara of a sota is exempted. Why? Because she had relations with her second husband, okay? It was under the impression that the first husband died, okay? So there was a question there. Just like in the example of a sota, there's a question there of whether she really was involved in something or not. Okay? So that's his challenge to the example of the sota. Okay? Amar lach Rav, and Rav said, would answer in this situation, Amina lach, I would say to you, Ana sota deoraita, va'at amar li sota de Rabbanan. I'm talking about an example of sota based on the Torah, and you're talking about an example of sota from a rabbinic perspective. Uteka'are la. Okay, and when we declare or expound this, ma'ikari, what do we ask? Okay, about her? Kasavar, we're of the opinion, called the takun rabbanan, ke'ein deoraita tikun, that whatever law the rabbis made, enacted in this kind of a situation, okay, it's similar, going to be on a similar level to a deoraita. Okay, however, Meitiv Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi challenges and says as follows, Nichnesa imo l'seter, v'shahata imo kadei tum'ah, if a woman entered with him in private and remained there with him enough time that it could be that they could have had relations, right? And therefore would have been therefore considered in a status of tumah. Asura lebeita. We say that she is forbidden to her household. In other words, to her husband, right? Va'asura le'echol b'truma. And were she to have been married to a kohen, right? She is forbidden to eat any truma then as well. Ve'imet, and if she dies,
No, her husband.
Her husband,
not she, I'm sorry, if the husband dies, right? Choletzet, she is required to have chalitza velo mityabemet. Okay? So therefore that would tell us that yibum does apply to a sota. Okay? Va'amar lach Rav, Amar lach Rav, and Rav would then argue, Amin alach, I would say to you, Ana sota vadai, va'amart li et sota safek. I'm talking about a clear case of sota, and you're talking about simply a situation where there's doubt as to whether or not she's a real sota or not. Okay? Umashna sota vadai, maitama. And what is so unique then about the status of we want to call it a potential sota, or a questionable sota. All right?
The word vadai, that's not, vadai doesn't mean question.
No, it doesn't. I'm saying, so what's so unique about the sota for sure, so to speak? Yes, Eric.
Isn't the whole thing moot? If you have a definite sota, doesn't she she'll get eliminated to some extent, and then that takes away the whole argument? Sounds to me we're only left with an indefinite, uncertain sota.
Right, that's why I said, remember the questions, is this whole discussion theoretical, right, or practical? Okay? If it's theoretical, I can understand why the Gemara would say, well, what about her? What about her tzara? Okay, if she's only suspect, okay, and the husband dies, do we still say that the requirement, the mitzvah of Yibum, is so strong in Zika, okay, that the brother has to perform it?
That was if Zika bond wasn't impaired.
When the more saying vadai, it means that she actually had bia.
Yeah,
And a sota sophic is a woman where we don't know.
we don't know. Right. Okay, why says the Gemara, Ma'itama mishum dektiv ba tuma. But there it's clearly written the word tuma, right? Sota safek nami tuma ktiva ba. But even the questionable sota, right? There also the word tuma is written, right? Titania, as we find stated in the following brayta. Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar Omer, Mishum Rabbi Elazar, in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Hamachzir Grushato min Hanisuin, one who takes back his divorced wife in marriage. Asura, she's forbidden. Okay, min ha'erusin, but if he took her back from simply a status of engagement and not marriage, muteret, she's permitted. Why? Mishum shene'amar, because it said, acharei asher hutma'a, after she has become a tumeah.
She got married to a
Second husband, right? So in other words, knowing the fact, according, if I remember correctly, Doraita, if Mr. X divorces Miss Y, and then Miss Y married Mr. Z, okay? Mr. X can never, and then she got divorced, okay, from Mr. Z, she cannot go back and marry Mr. X, right? Right? Okay, so what happens? And the sages say, Echad zo ve'echad zo, asura, regardless of whether it's nisuin or, right, erusin, she can't come back to him, right? Elama'ani mekayem, but how then do I understand or establish it? Acharei hutma'a, the rabot sota shenistara, that phrase after she's become tme'ah includes the potential or the questionable sota as well. So the Gemara then asks a valid question. Umay nistara, what do we mean then when the Torah says that she's secluded herself? Okay. Nivala, that she had actual relations. Vamai karela nistara. So then why then does the Torah refer to it as simply secluded? Okay? Lishna ma'alya nakat. It's euphemism. Okay? Nice language, says the Torah. Okay? Nivala tum'ah behedya k'tivba. When there was this clear situation of relations, the fact that she's impure is specifically spelled out, stated, right? V'nistarahi nitma'a. Okay, so we're there saying, and then when she's secluded, here also it seems to imply that she is in a tmeya situation. Lamekam Allah belav. Maybe it simply comes to tell us, to remind her, to establish it, that this is a prohibition. Okay? Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar, la besota litle. Rabbi Yossi is saying, no, that regarding this situation, it isn't simply a love. Va'afilus nami. Okay? And even in a situation of, I didn't see what it was in Art Scroll. Koran translated it as fornication. Okay, that's what Koran translates it as? Okay. All right. Yeah, that too? Okay. All right. My Tama. Okay. What was the reasoning? Havya v'ishut kativba. Okay. So the other is why? Because in becoming betrothed, okay, and here we're talking about a situation then of marriage as well. Okay. All right. So the implication would seem to be, even according to the rabbis, that even when she was in a status of being engaged, if she had relations, okay, with somebody while she was engaged, she would still be then considered in the status of tmeya, and therefore that nullifies what happens. Okay, let's go on now. By mine Rav Yehuda me Rav Shesha. Okay. So coming back, I'm going to suggest here, one who takes back his divorced wife after she married another, and then this original husband dies. That's what we're dealing with again. So, right?
In other words, this is a forbidden marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? We said,
Forbidden marriage is taking place.
right. In other words, in other words, X divorced her, X divorced Y, she married Z, Z either dies or divorces her, and X takes her back. Doraita, we said that is not permitted. Okay? All right. So we'll see. We'll see. Ba mine Rav Yehuda mi Rav Sheshet. He asks as follows: Hamachzir grushato mishenise. One who takes back his divorced wife, who was married a second time. Okay, so this is now she returns to the original husband after having been married to somebody else. Okay, umate. And that original husband, I'm going to use the word, he's deceased, he dies, right? Saratamahu. What's the status of the co-wife? Okay. In other words, he in between, Mr. Number One, husband number one, okay, could have married somebody else and still remain married to her. Okay. Mahu. Aliba de Rav Yossi ben Kefar. According to Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar, lo tabailach. You don't even have to ask a question. Kevan da Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Kefar. Since Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar already said to us, Tum'ah b'machzir grushato, hu diktiva tzarata kemota. Since you said that woman, the divorcee, like we'll call her, in being taken back, since it's written about her that she is tme'ah, likewise her tzara, her co-wife. Okay, that's how Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar would hold. Ve'im mishum kediktiv ba to'evahi, and word be written that this is a to'evahi. He to'eva, she then would be an abomination. Ve'ein baneha to'avim, but her sons are not abominations. Okay? Ha sarata to'eva, and here, in this case, her co-wife would also be an abomination. Okay? In other words, since she's tmeya, the co-wife is tmeya, but her children okay, are not affected. They would not be considered mamzerim. Okay? Ki tibayalach. So therefore, when you ask this question, aliba de rabbanan. What about asking it according to the perspective of the rabbis? Afal gav de amur rabbanan tuma besota hu dichtiv. Okay, since we say that according to the rabbis, tum'ah regarding the sota is written, right? Ein mikra yotzei de pshuto. Do we say that the pasuk cannot be taken out of its simple context? Okay, and which would seem to imply that only the sota herself is tuma and not the co-wife, right? Exactly. Odilma, or perhaps kevan de iakar, since we're going to uproot the pshat meaning of the pasuk and say, since tuma is reading, it's tuma is written, we're going to darshan it as does, okay, Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar, and then say it also is going to apply to the co-wife, okay? Odilma kevan de ikar iakar. That's the question. Ika da amre. There are those that say, aliba de rabbanan, lo tabayilach. Based on the view of the rabbis, there's no need to raise the question here. Why? Kevan de iatkar iakar. Since it was uprooted, it's uprooted. Namely, we do hold that since tuma is written in the pasuk, it applies to any women, the divorced woman and any co-wife as well. Ki debayelach, when you have to ask this, aliba de Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar, we have to ask it according to the view of Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar. Mai, what's the situation? Afal gav de amar Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar, despite the fact that Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar has told us, Tum'ah b'machzir grushato hu dektiva, that clearly Tum'ah is written in regards to the divorced woman, specifically there in the Torah. Mi'et rachmana hi to'eva, that the Torah actually limits the status of what woman is going to be considered an abomination. Ve'ein sarata to'eva. And that abomination term only applies to the divorcee and not applies to the co-wife. He to'eva, right. O Dilma, or perhaps, right? He to'eva, ve'ein baneha to'evim. She, the divorcee, is a to'eva. Her sons, her children are not. Ha, saratat to'eva. But here also, I'm going to say that co-wife is also going to be considered a to'eva, okay, an abomination. All right, as we go on, Amarle, says the Gemara, Tinituha, you learned this, okay? Where did we learn this? In the following scenario. Two Yavamot, okay? Right? Two Yavamot.
Somebody was married to two women.
He's married to two women.
Oh.
Okay, Yosef is married to Hannah and Rachel. Okay? So you have two widows, each, and they're not related, right? Not related. So they are each a potential Yavama. Okay? All right? And what happens, says the Gemara now as we continue. Haita echat sheira, one is fit or suitable, ve'achat psula, and one is not fit or not suitable. Notice the Gemara doesn't define it yet. All right? Okay. Im haya choletz, if he's going to perform chalitza, choletz lepsula, let him perform chalitza to the one who is unfit. V'im haya miyabem, and if he's going to do yibum, miyabem l'kshera, let him do yibum to the one who is suitable or fit. Now notice still, we've got a question. We haven't defined it yet, okay? What does it mean who is fit or suitable? What does it mean who it's not fit or suitable? And I'm gonna throw out a curve and then we'll come back. Might we say that the definition could be, okay, maybe depending on what he does, could she be fit or suitable to marry somebody else, like a Kohen? Okay, maybe that's the definition of fit or suitable. Okay, I don't know yet. I got to see what the Gemara tells me. Okay, so what happens? Okay, we go on. The Gemara asks our question. My kshera umay psula. What then does it mean when it says fit or suitable? What does it mean when it says unfit or not suitable? If we say that suitable or fit means in general, in other words, she could marry anybody, psula la'alma. And we say unfit or unsuitable means in general. Kevan delididei chazia, since she's suitable, since for him she's suitable. My nafka lemine, what difference does it make? Elalav,
It's not suitable for somebody else.
okay, rather not. What must we not then understand it? Kshera le, okay, that maybe she's suitable for him, psula le, or maybe she's not suitable for him. Umay nihu, and therefore, what are we talking about here? For others, what kind of a situation? Machzir grushato, like the situation of one who takes back his divorced wife, okay? If she never married to somebody else, then, right, he can take her back. But if she married somebody else, okay, first husband, the original husband, can't take her back. So she's not suitable for him, okay? But she could be suitable for somebody else, but not for a Kohen, by the way, all right? So what happens? Uktani, and we've learned, V'im haya miyabem l'kshera, and it says, and if he does yibum, he should do yibum to the one who's suitable. No, says the Gemara. Le'olam kshera. In general, we have to say that she should be suitable. Kshera la'alma, that she's suitable in general. Psula la'alma. And if she's invalid or unsuitable in general, right? Udikamarta kevan delididei chazia. And since you've said that for him, suitable, mai nafkale mina, what difference is it for him? Mishum de Rav Yosef, because we base it on what was said by Rav Yosef, Dama Rav Yosef, who says Rav Yosef, Kan Shana Rebbe. Here, Rebbe taught the following concept, okay, or general principle.
Euphemism.
Okay, a euphemism, right? Lo yishpoch adam me boro va'achirim tzrichim lahem. Somebody should not pour the water out when others have need of it. Okay? Which is, you could call it a euphemism. In other words, don't destroy something that could be beneficial or advantageous for somebody else. Okay? Right? Okay. In this case, what are we talking about? Okay. In the situation of ruining her status, okay, if he performs, let's say, chalitza to a woman who actually is suitable for him, it may be that he's suitable for him, okay, and then after the chalitza, she should be eligible to marry anybody else in general, but that's not really the case because a Kohen can't marry a woman that's gone through chalitza. So it renders her invalid.
If she was kosher to him
Right,
and he did chalitza,
right.
he is rendering
Her invalid for somebody else, namely a Kohen. Exactly. Okay. So that's the point. Tashma, listen to the following as we continue and try to begin to finish up. Hamachzir krushato mishanis eit, one who takes back his divorced wife once she has married somebody else. He v'tzarata choletzet. This Braita teaches that both she and her co-wife can be no yibum, only chalitza, can have chalitza. He v'tzarata sagadata. You think both of them? Ela ema, I would say, he tzarata, either her or her co-wife. V'lav tarutze k'matar tzatla. But haven't you already given an explanation and an answer to this? Taritz hachi, explain it this way. He choletzet, she needs chalitza, sarata, her co-wife, o chaletzet omid yabemet, and the co-wife can have either chalitza or yibum. Amar Rabbi Chia, this is Rabbi Chia bar Abba, okay? Rabbi Yochanan Bai. Rabbi Yochanan has already asked the following. Hamachzir krushato mishanise, one who takes back his divorced wife after she's already remarried. Saratam mahu, the co-wife, what's her situation? Amar le Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami says, v'tabayalach higufa. One should be asking about her status itself. He,
the divorced wife.
the woman's status. He, gufa lo k'mebayale. She herself, he answers, I'm not questioning her status. Da'amrin and kal v'chomer. Because here, we might say a kal v'chomer argument. B'mutar la, that which is permitted to her, asura, that's forbidden. Be'isur la, then somebody who's forbidden to her, lo kol shekain, how much more so? Kikam bayeli, what the problem I had was the question, saratamai, her co-wife, what was her situation? Mi ilaim kal v'chomer lemidchet tzara, is the kal v'chomer strong enough, okay, to defer the tzara olam or not? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak matne hachi. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak teaches it as follows. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, says Rabbi Chia bar Abba by Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan asks, Hamachzir grushato mishin eseit mahu, one who takes back his divorced wife after she has already remarried somebody else, what's the status? Amar le Rabbi Ami, says Rabbi Ami, v'tibai lach tzarata. You should be asking about the co-wife. Tzarata lo k'mebayele. The co-wife was not a problem for me. De lo ilaim kal v'chomer lemidchet tzara. because the Kal V'chomer is not strong enough to defer the status, okay, of to put off the co-wife. Ella ki kimabayili, but what bothered me, he gufa, her status itself. Mai, what is it? Mi ilaim Kal V'chomer b'makom mitzvah. Is it such that the Kal V'chomer is strong enough to put off the mitzvah? Or low or not? Stay tuned tomorrow to find out.
They could have mentioned the memory of Rebbe here,
Yeah,
right? In this case,
that's right.
they could have mentioned.
They could have brought that up. Maybe that's what the Gemara is going to answer. Okay. Okay. We're a good team today, Ruvain.
Very good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, everybody.